Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. It's good to be with you today. I'm here in Miami where you saw it, or maybe you didn't. I had a couple of people tell me, email me, and just say, I'm not even going to watch, just going to check out your post game podcast. But the Raiders fell, and here to Miami, they fall to 2-8. Final score is 34-19. Got a lot that we have to dissect today. I want to make one point really clear. I'm not a fan, you all know that, but I'm also not a cheerleader, and I'm also not a negative Nancy. My job is to point out the obvious, to report, and then let you use your brain and make your own decision. Couple of observations that really hit me. Every podcast I've done this year after a loss, I've talked to you about the fight of the team, the grit of the team. I've talked to you about all of it, and it's been truthful. This was the first time talking with players, being in the locker room, watching them walk off the field. There was no quit. And do not misunderstand what I'm about to say is quit, but it was an exhaustion. You could just tell this is a team that really doesn't know what about the players, what the answer is. You can tell it's gone from frustration. Um, you can pick whatever word that you think fits. Again, no quit. That team battled until the very end. And listen, I said it in all my post game videos that you can go watch. I put up videos with AP and Gardner Minshew, and I put up audio with Max Crosby. I mean, I make it very clear. This is the NFL. There is no silver lining in a loss. You lost, but there is reality. But this was the first time that the team, to me, after a game, looked defeated. Looked like, all right, we're just holding on now. We're just trying to survive this now. Um, First time I noticed that with this group this season. Um, I want to reiterate, it wasn't quit. I've watched enough teams where guys quit. None of that, and that's to their credit. But at the same time, it's just quite frankly not a good football team. I think there's a lot of players on here, young players with big upsides. I think there's some stars, but it's just not good enough. Top to bottom, it's just not good enough. And obviously, I mean, you're sitting here today at 2-8. There are 7 games remaining. Things don't look real bright. That's just overstating the obvious. But they're looking for answers. Now, why is that? We can get into a lot of those areas, and we will. Clearly, one of the best defense, or the best defense in the NFL after AP took over last year. You're down Marcus Epps, the quarterback of your defensive backfield. You're down Christian Wilkins, your $100 million, many believe the best defensive tackle in the NFL, and Malcolm Cooch, your rising star, who was playing as good in the preseason as he had last season at the end, last second half. Those are all big deals. Then today, they eventually get to the point against a very good passing Miami team. They're down all 3 starting corners. Jack's out, Nate's out, JB's out. No team. Now, to their credit, nobody made excuses. I mean, AP's exact words were, "Hey, it doesn't matter. You go to battle with the 48 guys you got on the field, and it wasn't good enough." I mean, I'm telling you, I know nobody wants to hear this. And I don't mind saying they're not a good football team. That's the reality. I think there's a lot of good players. I just think as a team, collectively, they're not a good team. That being said, though, it isn't made up of a bunch of selfish players. It isn't made up of a bunch of guys who've quit. That's not going on. And I think that's important because when you say guys have quit and that kind of stuff, you're impugning people's character. And that's not right either. But I mean, they're just down a lot, and it was just the reality. And then once you saw, Jack was out, Miami did whatever they wanted. Now, quite frankly, they scored on 6 or 7 drives So they did really whatever they wanted, but the Raiders couldn't even slow them at that point to field goals. Offensively, I thought the offense was improved. I thought it was very improved. They score on 4 drives. They didn't have a lot of drives. Um, there was one turnover, but it was late when literally Gardner, the game was clearly over unless a miracle came. So Gardner at that point's taking risks. I'm good with that, and I think anybody reasonable is. You may remember back in training camp, um, I told you about they were practicing 4th and long, and they had to have a touchdown plays with 3 seconds on the clock. And I told you about an interception that Aiden O'Connell threw. And I said, I'm not going to hold any interceptions in that drill because the quarterback's job at that point is there's no time left on the clock. You got to score a touchdown. So put the ball in the air. That's really a lot what Gardner was doing. AJ Cole was injured, the punter. It didn't affect the team because there were no punting situations after he got injured. But clearly, that would be a massive loss for this team if he were to be gone for any amount of time. We'll find that out tomorrow when we talk to AP. But so here's the recap. The Raiders have a lot of talent. They're not a good team. I think the offense was improved, but when you've got a lot of talent, that's fine. But then when you've lost a lot of it and you're going with a bunch of young players, it is what it is. There was one Miami touchdown where all backups were in there, and it was a mistake. And AP talked about communication. And I want to dig into that a little bit because I think it's important to explain to you. When you've got a Marcus Epps and you've got a DeCamerion Richardson in there, a rookie, he's saying, hey, watch for this. This is your area. He's communicating, he's quarterbacking. Well, when everybody back there is young and backups, nobody's had the experience of communicating. No one's had the experience of being that leader. And it was clear. Once the leadership was gone, the Raiders defense was just, was over. And so you saw them come in. Again, I think Raider Nation should be celebrating. You still have the worst record in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars down the road are coming here. And what should be a battle for the number 1 pick, it's literally going to be a game where probably the loser is the winner. I think there's one good thing if you are I'm here at the stadium, as you can hear them. They're cleaning, so sorry. I think there's one good thing if you beat Jacksonville, they don't need a quarterback. So there's that. But at the end of the day, this is just a team that is not playing well. Again, I thought the offense was improvement. I thought there was a lot of things, but the reality is the offense doesn't have a ton of weapons at the quarterback position. I thought Gardner did a very good job today. You saw him throw the ball away rather than take risks. It allowed the Raiders to stay in the game and to a point. And that's just the reality of the situation. I'm not going to sit here and paint roses because this is the NFL. This is a team with too much talent to be 2-8. Now, you can make an argument and say it's coaching. You can make an argument and say it's players. You can make an argument and say it's both. You can make an argument and say the franchise is cursed. I don't believe that part. I don't believe that third one, but you can make that argument. But the reality is this is the National Football League where a win is a win, a loss is a loss. Wins are great, losses suck. And you've been on the field 10 times this year, and 80% of the time you've come off it with a loss. Sucks. And I'm going to tell you, I talked to some guys on the record and off, and you don't hear the finger pointing. None of it. And I'm going to tell you that's not normal with teams that had the expectations that this one did. Forget externally, the expectations they had internally. That's not normal. And I've done this a long time. So I think that is proof that a rebuild is not necessary, but a reload is. But clearly they've got to get better at the quarterback play. I thought Gardner was improved today. I thought the play calling was improved today. I thought the play calling was really creative. I think there was a lot of mistakes. There was one particular play where Gardner um, throws a pass, and if he had looked a little bit, there was somebody wide open down the field. In fact, there was a couple plays like that. But I don't think Desmond Ridder today would have been the answer. I just don't. I mean, he got here and he's had 2 coordinators in 2 weeks. So again, I'm not putting this at all on Gardner. I'm just stating the obvious, Mr. Obvious. This is just not a good football team right now. And that's the reality. So I can tell you this, they're absolutely going to keep fighting. They are not going to tank. However, and this is Hondo opinion, I don't think it's tanking when you get to a 9th loss. So I mean, you can make an argument now, okay, they're out. But last year at 9-8, they would have made the playoffs. But once you get to the 9th loss, I think you can make a legitimate argument. Do you start sitting some guys and playing younger players, just getting reps? And if you know that the season isn't going to go anywhere, now you may run into some resistance from coaches that say, no, wait a minute. If we go 2-15 and get fired, how are we going to go get other jobs? So then does management have to go to them and say, okay, we're promising you their jobs, which I don't think anybody would do at any level. Talking about the pros. It's just it's a real quagmire right now for the Raiders. But once you get that 9th loss, in my opinion, you have to go to the youth movement. That at that point, the advantages of what can I get out of a season? If I'm not going to go to the playoffs, what are the advantages that I can get out of this season? I can play a ton of young guys. I can play a ton of young guys. I'm going to give you some observations. I thought Brock Bowers has been what he's been all year, an absolute freaking stud. I'm going to give you his numbers here in a second. Please bear with me. But so here is Brock, 16 targets, 13 catches, 126 yards, 1 touchdown. And I'm going to tell you this. I think he was better than the stats. Mike McDaniel's the Dolphins coach after the game, and that was just a minute ago. I literally just got out of the locker room, but Mike McDaniel's after the game all he said was, "Whew." Talking about Brock Bowers, he's going to be good for a long time, an absolute stud. And I know a lot of Raiders are mad that the Raiders didn't get a quarterback last year. But like I told you before the draft, nobody was trading. So they weren't going to get one of those quarterbacks. You can't make somebody trade. So if you know that you can't make a trade, then take solace that you got Brock Bowers. Because you're going to have a new quarterback next year, and he's going to have the benefit of a Brock Bowers. So there's that. I thought Michael Mayer, seeing him get back in action, 3 targets, 1 catch, but he was hustling out there. Had some great blocks. I thought he was good. Jacoby, I mean, he's Jacoby, 4 of 6. There were some other plays. There were some points left on the field, but that's not on coaching. And I think it's very important to differentiate. I have come to you after games and said, this was on Luke Getsy. This was on offensive coaching. And I've come to you and said, this was on players. Offensively, I thought the offense was improved. I think there were points left on the field. And I think those were left by offensive players, not offensive coaching. Not making excuses. I'm giving you the truthful reality. Now, you're welcome to disagree. I'm not God. I don't care. Let's talk about Gardner for a minute. He was 30 of 43, had a quarterback rating of 93. So not outstanding, not trying to pretend it was. I think he missed some guys. I think there were a couple of throws that were completions, that there were some guys a little bit farther down the field. But again, I thought it was phenomenal the way he protected the football. I'm going to give him a mulligan. Already told you why in the 1 interception. But there you go. Now, let's talk a little bit about rushing. Now, if you look, I mean, AJ Cole only punted one time. This was not a game with a ton of possessions, a lot of running of the football. I mean, the Raiders ran it for 60 yards. Miami ran it for 82, but there were also a lot of passes that, caught and the play kept going. So again, thought it was interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the defense. We're gonna get into that and talk about that and really get into the reality of that. But time of possession was 26 minutes for the Raiders and 33 minutes, basically 27 minutes for the Raiders, 33 for the Dolphins. Penalties, the Raiders had 7 for 49, 7 penalties for 49 yards. And again, they were brutal. There was a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and it was absolutely very difficult for them to do a lot. They're down that many players and then self-inflicted wounds. I've said it all year. It's been the story. Not good enough to beat themselves, not good enough to also have to beat the opposing team. And that's just the reality of what it is. And so there you go. That is the story. That's the recap. I will tell you, there was one play that stood out to everybody. And there was a hold on Miami that brought him back. The ref announces it. Then the other ref, it looked like he just kind of dropped his flag after it showed on the big screen. So Case Kiefer from the Las Vegas Sun, my buddy and a great journalist, by the way, who helps cover this team. He's our elected pool reporter. So if you don't know what that is, there's one elected pool reporter that's allowed to ask referees about controversial plays. So here was Case's question. When was the face mask penalty noticed, and when was the flag thrown in the third quarter? Las Vegas first and goal at the 4 with 5:22 remaining. The referee, Hussey, says, quote, so that's the last name. That's his last name. So I announced that the holding penalty from one official, 2 officials were talking to each other, and they were piecing it together. I think they both had the feeling or a sense that there was something on the play. So they came together and were talking. And as I announced the holding penalty, they confirmed the fact that they had a face mask, threw the flag, and brought that to my attention. I just took the next step and did another announcement to include the face mask and offset both penalties. Case's follow-up question, was that why the initial holding penalty seemed like it was already assessed? Quote, I don't think it was assessed or stepped off because I had just announced it. The 2 officials were talking behind me and I wasn't sure what they were talking about, but it did not cause me any concern. It's just one of those plays where they each had a different angle and they wanted to collectively talk to each other to get that right or to get that result. Excuse me. Case's last question, was the call affected either by the replay or the reaction from the crowd? Hussey says, quote, no, we don't officiate that way. I'm going to say this. I appreciate, I'm not calling the referee a liar. I have many friends that are referees that I believe are men of integrity. I'm just saying, strictly from the eye test, that answer doesn't seem to pass, but I'm not calling them a liar. Again, because I have so many friends that are officials, including NFL. My belief is because I know so many, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say, okay, although it isn't what the eye test told me, I'm going to believe that. And again, I'm going off of that because I know so many officials, including in the NFL, that are men of integrity. You may not believe it. And I'd be quite honest with you, I wouldn't blame you. And I don't get in trouble for disagreeing with them at all. But I'm telling you exactly what I thought, what was said, and what the observation is. So, complete recap is this is not a team playing well. It's a team that, to me, looked exhausted today, not physically, just by the situation. I'm going to have a lot more to talk about this after I watch the film, probably on Tuesday's podcast. Tomorrow, I'm going to address it a little bit, but a lot on Tuesday. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about some stuff about the draft and about the quarterback position, but we'll get into a lot of that tomorrow. I'll get some of your questions. But again, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you all more than you know. So from here in Miami, complete recap. Raiders fall to 2-8. A lot of talent on this team, but just not a good football team. See you all tomorrow. Thanks for joining me.